Hi, I'm Renee Tucci, and today we're going to look at creating a design that's perfect for Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day. Okay, so as you might have guessed, our design today revolves around a heart. Of course, that's the most iconic symbol when you're talking about Valentine's Day, but I wanted to create something that was a little different and not so screaming love and romance and red. So I'm leaning on my favorite, my signature color, yellow. And so we're going to start today with some yellow dogwood branches. I have them here on my table. I've already graded them out into two separate piles. Grading means that I took my larger bunch, I sized them up, and I picked out the longest one so I would have the most length to work with. And I separated them into two similar piles for two sides of our heart. Now, starting with the first side, I've got, as I said, my branches. I have about 4 pieces here, and they all have, as you can maybe see, sort of a natural curve to them. Some are going this way, some are going that way. I'm going to line them up so that the bottoms are all about the same and that the tops are starting to point in the right direction. But what we're going to do is massage it. Now, massaging is a technique used in floral design on a lot of different materials. Branches, all kinds of fresh flowers, anything fresh and flexible but not to the snapping point can be massaged. And what you're doing is using the warmth and the mechanical push from your hands to slightly start to work the stems in the direction you want them to be, little by little. And the more you do that, the more it naturally holds that way. As you can see, it's already starting to form that loop or that hook that I want. So to just hold it all in place, now this has made it easier for me to start, but we're going to need a mechanic to hold it into place. So I will take my branches and fold them back on themselves, creating the first side of our heart, and get them to where I think most of the tips are all held in that spot, meeting the other side. And I could hold this in place with a lot of different mechanics. I could use a chenille stem, a regular wire, bind wire, but I'm actually going to use something a little stronger. And what I have here is a twist tool, and this is a daintier version of what's used in rebar applications, so you could find it in a bigger version in your big box home improvement store. But this is the wire that goes along with it, and it has a loop on either end. So I'm just going to take this and lay it against my binding point, bring those two hoops together, and then with my twisting tool, hook through those hoops and start pulling. And the ratchet mechanism inside does all the twisting for me. And it twists down into the branches and it holds them in place. Now, I have done this before one too many times and actually pulled out my Hulk muscles and broken the wire. So that's why I'm pausing here. You can overdo it depending on how many times you crank it. I just want to make sure I've got the good mix between a really good hold, but not too much that I might actually over crank the wire. Okay, so hopefully you can see here, I've got a really good bind on that. I'm going to take this excess tail and just push it down and lay it parallel next to the branches. And then I'm going to repeat. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll take these and start massaging them using the warmth and the friction from my hands until they're starting to bend the way I want them to, which they are now. Bend it down, get most of those tips. I have one rogue tip that's sticking up here, so I'm actually going to bend him down to bring his tip in with the others. His little hook, his hoop, will be a little shorter than the rest, but that's okay. I think it gives it a lot of interest and some depth. So again, I'll take my twist tool tie, try saying that 3 times fast, wrap it around my bind point, hook in my twisting tool, and just start pulling. And pretty quickly, it all gets bundled up in there. Now you'll want your branches to be as compressed as possible before you start twisting. So if they happen to be elongated in the bundle, you might want to sort of smush them so that they're more rounded. That way you'll get a really good bind. Okay. All right. So I'm happy with that. Again, we'll take this little extra twist, just lay it parallel. Now we've got one side of our heart and the other side of our heart. We're going to put those together. Just lay the two parallel. And let's combine those with a twist as well. So I'll get my other twist tool tie. And again, bind this around until the two hoops are matching. Bring in my tool and pull. Okay, now we have a heart. Isn't that cool? Now I wanted to just bring in another natural element to soften it up a bit. I have two pieces here of just some tender ivy, which is really lovely for this time of year. So I'm going to take one piece and lay it into my bind point area and just start winding it through the heart layers, wrapping it around. It doesn't have to go through every single branch. It can just go in and out here and there until we've got one side covered. Do the same thing with the other side. I have cleaned off the bottom of the stem so I have a clear area to lay into the binding point. And then again, just winding it through the different branches, creating layers of depth until you get it all the way around. It doesn't have to meet precisely at the same spot in the middle. We're going for that organic feeling here, so however you can get it to stay. At this point, you may want to go back and wherever one leaf might be sticking out a little bit, maybe you want to take that particular leaf and tuck it within one of the branches. They're all very soft and flexible, so it's easy to do this. And that way you get the leaves all facing the right direction and you get the best impact for them. Now that we have our heart armature ready, let's add some flowers around it. Now I have already prepared all of the flowers that we're going to be used, but I'll just quickly walk you through what I've done. We're going to be working with white ranunculus as our focal point in this design, and there's not too much to do to this. Sometimes it comes with side laterals without any real buds or flowers on it. You can go ahead and cut those off, and of course any leaves. This is green trick dianthus. It's in the carnation family, and this will usually have leaves at each knuckle. You'll want to remove those. Same with these yellow carnations, obviously, same family, and we'll have the skinny leaves at each knuckle, need to be removed. Next up we have some pink spray roses or miniature roses. They come with multiple blooms on each stem, and I have again removed all the leaves off the stem, and I've also removed, some might say sacrificed, any of the lower blooms. Some of the stems did have more miniature roses coming off of them, but they sat much lower, and I wanted to have all of my flowers right about at the same plane. So I did have to sacrifice a few of those blooms, but I'll just add those into a small vase and enjoy them somewhere else. And then lastly, we have our accent filler, which we're going to use a little more uniquely in this design, and this is called wax flower. This is it's like a pinky blush, touches of white wax flower. It's really beautiful, and I've just again cleaned those stems so that I've got just the cluster of the flower up top and a clean stem to work with. Okay, so let's build our design. I'm going to start, as you might guess, with my heart in the middle, and what I'm going to do is make a bouquet, and then we can decide what we want to do with that bouquet once it's all together. And around the bottom of the heart, I'm going to mainly work with a base of the green trick dianthus just to get started here. So I'm using this flower right around the binding point that we created at the bottom of our heart. Now I don't want it to be strictly green trick dianthus. I want there to be a pretty even distribution. So I'll start adding in some carnations. And you'll see at this point already that I'm considering my binding point where my flowers are going to be, and I'm going to create a spiral bouquet. So that just means that all of the flowers are going to be placed rotating around the same axis. So we'll take these carnations and we'll start adding these in as well. There's no super serious rhyme or reason. You just want to look at it as you're building it and make sure that it's looking to your desires. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted the white ranunculus to be a focal point. So I want that just slightly removed from the heart, but all clustered together. And so I think I'm going to add that in at this point. Looking at my heart, I am going to pick a front. This will be seen from all around, but it's going to have a front. And so I think I would like, actually, I think this will be my front. And so I'm going to start to add the ranunculus in right here. And like I said, we're going to cluster it all together. And this is really fresh ranunculus, so it's in its mostly closed state, but over the coming days it will develop more and more, and it will become even more open and beautiful. Each stem is a little bit different, but it has sort of a green eye in the center, so it will mesh really nicely with the green trick dianthus and the ivy that we have up into the heart. So this is going to be a beautiful focal and very long lasting, along with our, of course, our dianthus and our carnations. Okay, now I have all of my ranunculus grouped together here. I have some a little higher up than others, some sunk in a bit just to give a little bit of depth and to draw the eye into this area. And now I'm going to continue to build around that. Let's go ahead and add in some of our pink spray roses, and we're going to do that all around. And as you can see, when I'm adding my stems, I'm doing it on an angle. So the flower head is on one side and the stem ends up on the other, and that's how you can get that spiral look. And we'll carefully twist the bouquet as we add more layers. Again, head goes here, stem goes over here, as opposed to just putting it in like this. That's the difference. I think I'll need a bit more dianthus. And like I said, as you go around, you just want to add more stems and just decide from your piles what you'd like, what you need in this spot or in that spot. It's really helpful to have nice organized work piles ready to go when you get ready to create something like this. Okay. Now also I knew ahead of time that I wanted to make a rounded bouquet. So as you can see, as I'm working around, each layer is getting a little bit lower and a little bit lower, and that's going to give us that nice mounded round look that we're going for. Okay, so pretty much I don't have too many materials left, so I'm going to assess where they might be placed best. And I think I'm going to layer this last dianthus here, a little bit lower than the layer before it. We'll do a carnation under the ranunculus and some more roses. And you can see I've got that nice spiral action here happening on the bottom, which is great. I have one more carnation and one more rose. So taking stock of how everything looks, I think I could use this here. And I'm going to put this pink rose over here. Okay, so that's a beautiful assortment. Now, of course, as you may notice, we still have our wax flower here. We haven't touched that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as my collar. So whenever you're creating a collar with any material, all you're doing is simply taking it and layering it at the base of the design. So again, I'm going to continue with that spiral pattern. I'm picking up 2 or 3 pieces at a time of this wax flower because it is a more delicate material. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of open blooms right now. It has a lot of buds, which I love for this particular design because it's bringing a completely different waxy texture. So I'm just layering these, little here, little there. Once I get them in place, I can fuss with it a bit, spread them out. And just still spiraling the base, but just pressing them against up underneath that last layer so that they, they stick out just a bit, but they should not be the superstar. They're really just the finishing touch. So as you spin it and add and turn and assess, you want to make sure you're keeping them as the supporting cast, if you will. Okay, I've got one little cluster left and one little spot to add it. I'll go ahead and put that right there. Go around and do any last minute floofing or zhuzhing. Make sure I'm happy with my collar. That's really beautiful. It adds a nice delicate touch. Now to finish the bouquet, you could do this with a lot of different methods. I'm just simply going to use a piece of, this is paper color covered wire or Oasis bind wire. And I'm just going to hold it with one hand, take the other tail, wrap it around pretty tightly as much as I can. This will go around 2.5 times, and then I'll come back to that original tail and twist. Really good, strong twist where I'm keeping the tails separated and I'm just cranking that wire into the bouquet to make sure I get a good grip. Now at this point we'll need to clean up our stems. So I'm going to bind those together and just decide how long I want to cut it. At this point, I need to know what I'm going to do with it. So I could simply finish this with a bit of ribbon, maybe with some beautiful tails coming down, and gift it to someone as a bouquet. In this case, I'm actually going to put it in this vase that I have here. It is a yellow translucent glass vase, so it's going to be the perfect complement to the yellow dogwood and the yellow carnations that we have in here. So just pulling this to the edge of my table here, I'll lower this bouquet. I want it to sit right at the neck of the vase, so I'll lower it so it's where I want it. Trace, using my hands, I'll trace back down to the table. That's how I know where I'm going to make my cut. And then simply using a pair of clippers, I've cut it all flush, and I will drop it into my vase. It sits really beautifully right there. Now at this point, you could actually lift it slightly and undo that twist that you put in there. That's really just a temporary hold to make sure that it's easy for you to manage the stems and the cutting. The flowers will do a little bit better if they are released within the vase. It allows better airflow and more water uptake. So you see I did that very easily. None of the flowers moved. Everything stayed right where we want it. I've got this beautiful ranunculus focal area here, which leads right back to our heart. Perfect for that Valentine holiday. This would be perfect for Galentine's Day. It doesn't scream romance, it just screams love and admiration. So there you go. I hope you've learned a tip or technique, and happy Valentine's Day.